Hi, today we're going to draw a face and we're going to talk about the 7 elements of art and use them all in one drawing. This is part of my 100 Faces in 100 Days challenge. Let's get to work.
Okay, I started with the top of the head and then it came down and gave enough space for the eyebrows, bottom of the nose, lips, the chin, and the structure that holds the head so it's not floating in the air. Okay, then the lines help that. So shape, I started with value shapes. Okay, so I looked at all the shadow as shapes, not eyes, not nose, not lips. I didn't identify them, okay? Just looked at the shapes, connected some where they overlapped, like this. This is part of that shape, but it's also part of this shape. You'll see more of that later. Form is 3D, okay? Shape is a triangle, form is a pyramid. Shape is a square, form is a cube. This is an implied form because it's a skull, it's a face. But this is a 2D surface. So we imply form on a 2D surface by taking advantage of planes. So what I mean by planes is this. So our light source is here. This plane is facing away from the light. This is starting to turn away from the light. And this is away from the light completely. Okay? Because it's a sphere, it turns. Okay? So what we need to imply here is that this is a 3D object. This is wider out here and thinner out here. Okay. Our eye is also a sphere, so let's draw in a sphere. Very lightly. Circle and an ellipse to imply form. And this is our eyeball. This is our eyeball in here too. Okay. Our nose is a pyramid shape. It has a plane back here that we barely see. We can only see it down here. But we know that this plane is there. This is the front plane, the one with the highest amount of light. Like a little ball for the tip of the nose. And then we finish out the lower plane of the nose, where the nostrils sit. But we're not naming the nostrils. We're gathering our shapes only. This is all structure. So that's our pyramid, or rhombus, or whatever it's called properly in geometry. Okay, little ball. I recognize the little ball shape up front because it distorts the shadow and the light. So I have to take advantage of that. See, so her nose is not just straight. And it's a beautiful nose. It cuts in a little bit here, comes out a little bit over here, goes down, and then the ball shape distorts the shadow. See? All noses are beautiful. And I mean that. Okay? As we go, we're going to refine our lines. We're going to redefine our shapes. We're going to redefine our form. We're going to redefine that by adding value. We mapped out our value shape here, but now we have to input it, right? We have to fill it in. And I'm going to fill in just wherever it's dark. Not worried about texture because I'm going to use my blender to shade. My handy graphite crayon. I love this thing. I'm going to protect my light areas, but I'm not going to worry about where I have sharp edges. Sharp edges is also part of a line. It's where it is more defined in the image. Some lines, some edges blend, and there's soft turnover, like on the cheek, it's a soft gradient turn into the shadow, which here it's a little sharper. So when we refine them, we're going to blend it here. So this is darker, this is a medium tone, and this is our light area. Lightest area. And we're going to discuss texture much later when it comes to the details, like her hairline has texture, her lips have texture, and her eye, the lower eyelid has texture. Right now we're just putting in our value. Not worried about lines, not worried about texture. Just trying to stay in our value shapes. Follow our map. She has some reflected light on her neck, right? It's beneath her chin, set back in space, right? So that's how we get space. That's how we use space in our composition, okay? This is set back from her chin, but right now it's one shape. It's one big block. We're gonna carve into it later. Okay. With our blender tool, we're going to get rid of a lot of that scratchiness. This is a drawing tool. Draw with it. It doesn't just blend. The graphite you lay down, you can actually make marks with it. And that's a lot softer than the original lines that I made. I'm going to actually go into the background. Okay? This is going to help bring the face forward on the brighter side, because the background has color. underneath her lip. Her lip makes a little shelf that casts a shadow. I'll add her lipstick and we'll address the value of the planes of the lips later with color, because color has value too. This is just a good start. We employed line to put in our structure. We made our value shapes. We implied form by studying the cross contours of the ellipses in the form. We discussed planes. So we're gonna start adding just a little bit of form shadow on this side of the face because it's facing away from the light. Okay, there's reflected light here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to erase my reflected light just a little bit, so that'll help me define her face. The white of her eye is in here. And a little bit out here. Okay. See her face already. I'm going to start adding just a little bit of light from that enters the scalp. Add that back in just a little slightly. Okay, that softens up my lines. She's not completely white here, so I'm going to start softening that up slightly, just to dirty it up a little bit, okay? Soften that ridge. Okay, we're gonna reapply our value here in a minute. Adding where our darkest darks are. Start with our ear, or this ear shape rather, back here. Because that helps us define. It's the furthest thing in space. Push that back. Okay. And just a little bit more value down here. This is lower back, so this plane, this right here has a shelf. If you touch your face, this area here faces the light more than this side. This is facing downward. So I'm going to make this slightly darker. The reason there's shadow here is because it's facing away this way. So we have a ball, or let's use our eraser. So this is her cheekbone here, right? This is another plane that faces away from the light, like this. It comes down, not as extreme as this cube shape. All right, but it also goes that way, like this. Not as extreme, but it turns away. So that's why it has more value. It's part of the value shape. We're going to continue that onward. Here, it's a little bit more sharper, where her temple turns toward her ear. Okay. We're going to add some more value to her hair because it's the darkest in the frame. This also, okay, this is getting more light than that back here, so I'm just adding more value where it's darkest. I'll smooth it in and blend it later. Okay, her hair again is the darkest. Her neck is back here, so I'm going to do this line a little harder than I would normally. But I'm trying to get the shape of her ponytail. Even though it's part of the value, the darkest value shape originally, I'm going to break it up and make it darker so I can push it back. Okay, I have some reflected light in her neck. I have some reflected light right here. So I'm going to capture that now. It's going to be white, but I'm going to bring it back to shadow later. Just want to identify it now. Okay, we add value and we take away the entire process. Okay, now she has this triangular shape because of the position of her neck. So I have it identified here. So I'm going to cut into her, past her clavicle. Just going to do that for now. I'll soften that up later. Erase those lines that I made, and we'll add that back in. Okay, so this is her clavicle. This is her shoulder. Okay, and we blend that in. Okay, I'm going to add more. This is a cast shadow. Okay, so there's form shadow and then there's cast shadow. The form shadow is created by the neck itself. The neck is like a cylinder. So as the plane of the cylinder faces away from the light, it has a form shadow. Okay, that's this shape here. But her chin is casting a shadow. So her chin cuts in and makes a triangular shape under her chin and onto her neck. Okay, cast shadows are something on a shape. Form is made by the shape. By the form, rather. Let's use our proper terms so we can start practicing our vocabulary. Leave that reflected light nice and bright right there. And now I can get rid of that light because it's not as bright as her face. So we're negotiating our values, one form, one plane at a time. So we make this one shape again. This is in her entire neck. And then we're going to cut in where it's brightest. So this tendon, I think, I'm not sure, but this tension under her neck is catching light right here, this. And then here as well, just a little bit. Just insinuate the line there. We'll marry them later, okay? This line goes lower. Into her chest. Because her clavicle is catching light. So I'm going to block that in, okay? Now, my focus is her face, so I'm not going to spend too much time on her neck. All right?
Hi, Kali. Okay, we're back. Sorry, my camera cut out. I have a gimbal and I had the hand gestures
program on, so it stopped recording and I didn't notice. And now I want to talk about what I did. So what I missed talking, what you didn't hear, was that, remember we made the eyeball, like the eyeball shape? Well, I added in the eyelid to follow the eyeball shape. This came around the sphere. And down here, to bring it forward, I did the planes. So I did this plane that faced away from the light, this one facing toward the light, and this one facing again away from the light. I'll add now the shot that I got randomly of me shading. All right, I took a look at it. I took a photo of it with my other phone. I realized the chin is too low still. This was made 2 days ago, and in between I did another face. And as you can see in that video, I made the chin too low as well. So I had to cut into it as I was drawing and adding the background and all that. So let's tackle that now. We didn't really see the eye getting developed here. Okay, but this is too flat. Okay, it's a big white triangle that is too flat. So let's talk about this face. Okay, so this is too white. It's too white. Okay, so this space and this area here are the lightest areas. So I need to bring in value into the cheeks. This one is a step lighter than this one, so I need to add even more value here. Oh, something you also didn't see in the recording is I added texture, her hair texture. So I added curved lines going upward to simulate the hair, and I left it identified. I didn't blend them in yet because that is part of line. I wanted to incorporate more distinct line. That's texture, and that is also contour because it's her forehead and her head. I want to simulate that there's a curve upward, which is what her hair does, right? It curves upward. It's not just flat on her from the forehead back. Her head is part of the form, right? And it doesn't, our heads don't just end at the forehead. They don't just go flat backward. So I have to add a little bit of space to incorporate her hair. All right, so that's line. Shape, we have lots of shapes. I want to focus on value shapes in this composition. Form is all of the little tips and tricks that we use to simulate 3D object like a head on a 2D surface. Texture are those little details that give the drawing life. Value is the differentiation of where light hits versus how shadows give the form its form, right? And it's also used for contrast. Her eyes are the areas of highest contrast. So the dark is dark and the light is light are next to each other, and that's how value is important. It is contrast. It's one of the principles of art, and it draws our attention. So that's value, right? I'm focusing on steps of value. Space is, okay, so her neck is further back than her chin. So we need to simulate that in our 2D surface by pushing value backward and bringing lit items forward. And then for color, we'll tackle that later. I do want to add some color, especially in the lips, and I will show you how the 3 planes of the lips corresponds to the color form and value. So my first thing is I'm going to add value to her cheeks. So immediately just doing this to the chin, I added a plane to the chin. I'm basically shading in underneath her chin. By adding value, what I did was added this shade here, this space. I pushed it back into space. I went from here to here. So the value, the important thing that we learn in studio classes is to draw from life. And that is an incredibly valuable, important skill to have, because if you only draw from photos, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you are relying on the camera or the digital medium to inform. Okay, this is flat and this is flat. Translating the flat image onto another flat image. Drawing from observation, drawing from life, it forces you to learn how to interpret 3D objects onto a 2D surface. Okay, so it helps you actually better navigate and better negotiate these elements. Don't worry, it looks like a mustache, but I will bring her light back up later. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Here's the problem with drawing at the same time as recording. I have experience in, documentary and skills, but I can't pay attention to the camera. I can't pay attention to my composition all that well. I can't pay attention to the technical aspects of it. Can't listen to the audio that's being recorded. There's a lot that I have to ignore in order to pay attention to my drawing. And now that I'm talking through it for education purposes, it's a whole other thing that I have to consider, because I don't want to leave you in the dark. Like, what is she even doing? Right? I don't want you to think that. I know I don't want to think that when I'm watching videos of other people making art. I love listening to other people's thought processes as they create. Okay, so that's good. I have a little bit of value there. I don't want to add too much graphite. I'm going to have to blot some of that graphite back down or off, because I want to add color. And I don't want to add color onto graphite, because as a watercolorist, not that I'm going to add watercolor, but as a watercolorist, I learned how to, or the importance of having a cleaner surface, a graphite-less surface, following the contour of her cheek. Now,
So erasing brings that plane forward
in space. Brings it forward toward the light, because our eyes recognize that the light is hitting that, so it must be closer to the light. Even if we don't know anything about art or photography, our eyes naturally recognize that just by evolution. How our eyes evolved to see. Okay, so there's muscles underneath her skin, and I want to follow the contour of those muscles, even if I'm not identifying those muscles. Okay. So now that I added value here, let's round this out a little bit. It's a little too squared off. Okay. Okay. Now that I added value here, I want to make it darker and make it lighter wherever I see it happening. I'm taking out my kneaded eraser. Keep it in this plastic so it doesn't collect graphite or charcoal or whatever. Tiny little dabs. Can you see? Because like I said, there's a soft transition from the highest plane of the cheek to the lowest plane of the cheek, or the farthest away from the light. So this is how we refine. We push and pull our values. Depending on the medium you use, it will decide how much, like when enough is enough. All right, even though I'm using a 9B, it can only add so much graphite. So I have to change to charcoal, or I have to just accept that that's it. That's the darkest. That's as dark as it's gonna get. Okay, I'm re-adding value down here where it's in the cast shadow. I'm gonna be careful with that. I'm gonna start using my blender to start making softer lines. So this is the reflected light we added. It's not bright white, so let me go ahead and add a little bit of graphite into the space. So it still reads like reflected light. But it is not bright white. It's not on the plane that faces the light. It's getting reflected light. It's getting ambient light. So the light that is in the space in her back here, that's where that light is coming from. That's too bright, so I'm bringing that down. I hope I'm not shaking you too much. Okay, here I'm adding value to the background so that on this side of the face, the edge can be soft. All right, an important distinction is for line especially are the edges. Edges are read as line. Okay, so it's a harsh line. Where do I see a harsh line? Here. So this is a harsh line compared to the background, right? This is a harsh line. But this is a soft line. And these are soft as well. Like between this shadow and her cheek is a soft line. It's a soft edge. Let's add a little bit more texture. Ow, I hit my elbow. Let's add a little bit more texture to her eyebrow. You don't have to do everything one by one, but just adding a little bit more texture so that it looks like single eyebrow hairs. Likewise over here, just on the edge. She's wearing eyeliner, so I gotta add that darkest line on her waterline without losing the little areas where the light is hitting. I'm gonna move some of this graphite onto the sclera of her eye, because the eye is not really white. The eyeball is not really white. It's also in shadow some places. Still recording? Good. Hopefully I've recorded all of it. Okay. That line was a lot, like those little dash marks were a little, had more pressure than the ones that I'm doing now, because they're more defined. They're her eyeliner. They're more defined, and she's not wearing eyeliner down here. So in order to make that distinction, I soften my pressure. I still want to follow the planes of the eye. There's a whole big eyeball sitting behind this skin and this skin here. And I need to simulate that by the distortion of the shadow and light. This plane faces down a little bit away from the light. So I have to simulate that here by adding a little bit more value. I'm going to thin this middle ridge line down a little bit more, but without forgetting my tip of the nose distortion. Okay. It's getting reflected light. It's getting reflected light in here on that edge of the nose. So I want to bring that back ever so slightly. And then I want to take away just a little bit more graphite from here. And here. Okay, I want to tone that down. It's not that bright anymore, right? All right. I think that's good, okay? So I hit a good point to stop. It's my interpretation of her face. It's my composition. I have some of the background, something down at the bottom. This is her face and not the anatomy of her neck. So I negotiated how much detail I put into that as well, into the rendering. And now I want to talk about color. Okay, I put my reference away because it's in black and white. It has no color. So I'm inventing the color, right? So I'm going to just dab a little bit of the graphite so it doesn't muddy my colors. And I know where my planes are. I can work from there. So let's see what kind of colors I have. Oops. Uh-oh. I dropped it. Okay. So I have this color. What I'm looking for are 3 values. I'm going to focus on 3 values in the composition. Let's see what I have. Let's talk about color. All right, color has 3 components. Three or four. Right now, hue is the actual color. Okay, it's the actual color, hue. Then there's value. There's saturation. Hi. If there's a 4th one, I don't remember right now, okay? So this is rose, carnation pink, okay? I'm just trying out my values relationship for this pink. Oh, this is actually lighter. And that's darker. Okay. So even though I thought this color was going to be lighter than this color based on the lid, I can see here that this is actually not. Let me test it out. One way that you can test out your values is by getting your phone, your camera phone, and going to, where are they at? Styles, I think. That's not right. Okay, I'm gonna take a picture of it. Okay, let's talk color here. All right, you go to adjust. There's saturation, right? So you decrease saturation, and that gives you the value. And so my eyes see this value as lighter than this one, but the camera tells me, or the value test tells me that it's actually the lightest. So it is the lightest value. So I'm going to use carnation pink. For the lightest value of the lips. It doesn't say the color. Okay. So I'm going to start with my midtones so that I can blend into my darks. Let's bring you back forward here. Are you good? Okay, you hold on right there. You push in here. There we go. So her darkest areas are out here, right? I'm going to add value into this plane. Into this plane. This is the medium. This is the midtone, okay? But I start with the midtone in the darkest areas just to map it out. I don't want to add too much of one thing, especially dark, especially because I can't take it away. Like with this medium, I can't take away. I can only add, okay? I'm going to go slow. I'm following the form that I made in my sketch. I preserved my brights, Okay, I know that this is the brightest area, so I'm preserving that white.
Hi. You want to say hi? You want to say hi? Give me a few more minutes, we go outside, okay? A few more minutes.
The angle of my marks informs the contours of the lips. And by adding more, I can make it slightly darker. So the lower lip, for our information of purposes of how it works, our lower lip faces down. So it's going to catch less light than this bottom lip. Okay. Now I'm going to add the darkest part, which is the line that separates the lips, that has some occlusion shadows, which means no light is hitting down there. Okay, I'm going to bring it slightly upward. And I'm going to add her lip liner. Make the shadow, the plane that's turning away from the light, a little darker. Just hints. And it's gradual, so I kind of marry. I let the mid-tone that I added inform where I stop. Now I add my lightest value so that I can see where else I can add more value. Oh, water markers are lifting the page already. Okay, so I'm going to revisit my mid-tone value just to add a little bit more texture to her lips. I can transition from the lightest value to the mid-tone. And again, from the mid-tone to the darkest. And I can do the same with the darkest. Another thing we can do to make it darker is use the complementary color. I'm going to take out this green. It's a light value of green, seafoam green. This seafoam green is a light value, but it'll push the darks and tone down the pink. By that, what I mean is it desaturates the pink. And makes it darker. Without using black. It reads like black. So now I'm going to take a photo of this and test my value. Yeah, see? It reads like darkest, lightest, and mid-tone. That's what it reads like, even though it's in color. Completely desaturated. Reads like that. So we used these four color, these two, in this hue, we used these three values, and then we used its complementary to push where our darkest value couldn't go further. All right, that should be good. Yeah, that's the final image. So you'll see that now.
Bye.